So I want to thank everybody for coming. I know a lot of students are quarantined right now, and so we appreciate everybody staying safe and healthy, and welcome to the speaker series. So tonight we're very excited to have Jim Lindner, but before we go over to Tyler, I would like to give a huge thank you to Maxine Pierce. She is one of our Western donors, and it is donations like hers that help make this possible. I also want to thank Greg Salisbury and Pete Sherman for allowing us to have this. In these day and ages, it's kind of hard exposing the students to different executives. So this has been a great way for us to do that. So with that, I want to turn it over to Tyler Hannenberg, my student worker, and he is coordinating the series. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you. Hi, everybody, and everyone on Zoom as well. Thank you, Mr. Lindner, for being here with us. So, Mr. Lindner, just a little overview. He graduated from Western with a Bachelor of Science degree. And throughout being here, he was actually a DJ, newscaster, and sports newscaster for the KGUC radio. And him and a colleague of him in the radio, they would throw sock hops for the high school every Friday. So after graduation, Jim had the goal of just doing radio full time. That was his career goal, but after getting married and going back home, he got a friend of his dad's to ask him, what about IBM? And he took that opportunity, took the interview, and ended up with IBM for 15 years. And since then, he's never looked back. He's moved up the ladder and gotten promoted, spent 3 years in sales class, and going after IBM, he has a position at the Olivetti North American, an Italian computer and office production company. And from there, he became the president and CEO of Memorex, Telex, which is another large company. And from going through that, he served as the CEO for 12 years as a chairman in Mitchell International, and grew, and he's still on the board for over 24 years now. And Jim currently serves on 5 tech company boards, and he has had many successes in his career and a few failures, but that is to come with the industry as a whole. So if everyone could welcome Mr. Lindner, and thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the warm applause, and I wish I was in Gunnison with you. It's been a long time, actually, since I've been there. I think it was about 15 years or so ago that I was invited to come there as a graduation speaker, and my wife and I traveled there and really enjoyed being back. It had been a while before then that we had been to Gunnison. You may hear some construction noise in the background. I now live in Park City, Utah, where I moved after spending the last 24 years in La Jolla, California, which is just north of San Diego. So if you hear some funny noises of graders going on, we're living in the house while it's being finished. It was supposed to have been finished September 28th, so it's been a bit of a journey. I started with a slide. If you want to put the first slide up, please. There we go. How about the next one? I chose the subject because I thought it was somewhat apropos of the times of sales during COVID and beyond, because I have actually been spending a fair amount of my time with the companies that I serve on the board of working on this. And I came across a quote which I like a lot, which is all revolutions are impossible till they happen, and then they become inevitable. And if anybody knows who Albie Sachs is, you win the door prize. Actually, Albie Sachs is a former judge in South Africa and a human rights activist who was appointed to his judgeship by Nelson Mandela. So I happen to also really like that quote. Why don't we go to the next slide, please? So, change is inevitable, and change has been accelerated significantly during the COVID crisis. During that time and before that, commerce has really evolved significantly from what it used to be. And one, I think, significant change is how customers find and purchase goods and services. A lot of that change started in business to consumer, and that still goes on. Obviously, companies like Amazon and others have been the leaders in that forefront. But that's now branching off to business, and it has been pretty much accelerated, as I'll cover, by the situation we find ourselves in during COVID. What's happened is customers today are far better informed than ever before. There's a vast amount of information that they can find out about what they're looking for, how to buy what they're looking for, which comparative shopping as to which is better. And as I said, that's now moved from the business to consumer level to business. And it is really accelerating dramatically. The second point is data is so available now and so useful that information is at the hands of the sales and marketing people, and especially marketing. In the companies that I work with, the sophisticated level of marketing is unbelievable these days. It's unreal how much digital marketers know about you, how they're able to use that information effectively, and how they're able to help sales, not just with what they call, marketing selected leads, but also sales leads that convert into sales. It's become somewhat of a sales revolution where the convergence of new ideas and new technologies in order to be able to sell and service clients has become really effective and really efficient. And what we've experienced is actually an important breakthrough in productivity. Change has to be viewed as an opportunity, I believe, certainly not as a threat. Same as we viewed other big changes. Email was a huge change. It was well into my IBM career, and you could say it was the shoemaker's children before we had email. And when we did have email, it was very clunky mainframe email, and it was only internal. And since that time, the way email has revolutionized the way we do business is quite profound. Smartphones is another example. The next level, I think, of the revolution in sales is artificial intelligence, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. So it's clearly my view that the change has to be viewed as an opportunity in order to take advantage of that change and not as a threat. Next slide. So I have different slides here than I think you do, or a different order of slides than you do, but we can figure that out. So, technology has created a new kind of a buyer, and that buyer and the way that buyer wants to buy and is buying is totally supercharged by the COVID experience. I'm on the board of 5 companies, and I actually chair the board of those 5 companies, so I'm pretty involved with management. And as the COVID situation hit, we took a very hard look at how we're going to operate. The first thing private equity does is we look at liquidity. and we say to ourselves, are our companies going to be able to get through whatever lies ahead of us, which we don't know how long it's going to last, and we don't know how deep that trough is going to be? Do they have enough liquidity? And typically what we do is draw down credit lines to be sure that the company has enough cash to survive. What we also found, however, that is our people became extremely adaptive to working remote. Many people liked it, most people liked it, and we changed the way we do business in order to operate remote more effectively. So relationship selling has really what I call is dead. I used to call relationship selling the people who had the credit cards and the good golf scores. They would make friends with their customers, and customers would buy from them because they liked them, because they were good people. But that's changed, and I believe that that is somewhat dead, although relationship selling, customers still want salespeople. They want to know who they're dealing with, but that has to be done now remotely. So no more, not much in the way of restaurants or not much in the way of the golf course anymore. But what really matters, I find, to customers now is deep subject matter expertise. If you're going to sell for a company, you better very well know the product line. You better know the ins and outs of the competition. You better know your customer. You better know a lot about them. I think that companies who lead this change will combine very skilled people and very up-to-date technology in order to deliver a best-in-class customer selling experience, and after that, a customer relationship experience. So to accomplish that, habits need to change. Habits which are deeply ingrained need to change. And what companies who are going to do well with this take the best and the most important parts of face-to-face and then add new knowledge and new technology to do it remotely. But I do still believe in a different way that you need to build relationships. Next slide, please.
I'm so mad. He made me go to work last night. Oh, I'm so mad about that.
He's not even here. I'm okay to zoom into this room.
I can hear a lot of background noise. Could people please mute? So success in the sales revolution is really about getting out of your comfort zone. It's about trading bad sales habits for high impact sales habits, as I like to call it. And your willingness to embrace these changes will determine your success or your company's success or failure in sales and sales management. And by the way, I give a lot of credit. One particular company that I'm on the board of is a company in Milwaukee called Xywave. And Xywave, the CEO at Xywave, is somewhat of a sales technology expert. He previously ran a company called Savo, and Savo is one of those sales automation companies that helps salespeople use automation tools effectively. So, some of those tools that are being used nowadays that are very effective, one of them is an area called CPQ. And in some of the companies I'm involved with, we have developed very effective CPQ, which stands for Configure, Price, Quote. Used to be a very labor-intensive deal to be able to configure what you're trying, and I'm talking, by the way, primarily from a technology and even a software point of view of how you sell those types of things, because that's the area of my particular expertise. Used to be a big manual process to configure something, to price something, to quote something to a customer. It took a lot of time. Now that process can be pretty automated. There's also a lot going on around the area of automated content delivery. And what that really means is sales information, training, news, all delivered through AI. And it delivers that information before you even realize you need it. So you're engaged with a customer, and based on that customer's information within your customer relationship management system, AI will deliver that content for you, throw it up on your screen, and make you look really, really smart just in time to make that right statement on a remote call. Next slide, please. So some major areas that sales organizations, I believe, need to rethink post-COVID and frankly during COVID. One is remote accessibility. We now live in a world, we've proven it during COVID, where people can work from anywhere, anytime. So top sellers that you hire, or that in your case may be hired by companies, will insist on having this or frequently won't take the job. In some of the companies, we have even, it really opens up a lot of interesting territory to you, because previously, if you ran a company in San Diego, you wanted all your people in San Diego. That has proven to be not necessary anymore. We can now look at almost a nationwide palette of talent, both in sales and in other parts of the company, including product development people, software engineers, who live in virtually any part of the world but can participate as a member of the team. The second area where I think sales organizations and people wanting to be in sales organizations need to rethink post-COVID is collaboration software. We're on Zoom today. I now spend most of my days on Zoom, not just board meetings, but meetings about sales organizations within the company, meetings about product development, et cetera. Mostly people use Zoom, but there are other technologies which sales organizations need to be trained on, and need to have guidelines on how to use them as effectively as possible. And then the third area is training. Selling remotely, I think, is a bit different. You need to know how to set an agenda, how to build rapport in a digital environment, how to engage all participants, what are the rules of participants, et cetera. Next slide, please. Then there's the area of lead and pipeline management. And for those of you studying sales and wanting to be in a career in sales, this is a pretty important thing to know. How do you forecast? Marketing automation, quoting, all the types of things I just talked about. Becoming facile with those techniques, I think, is important to seeking a job in sales. Needing to understand the buying process. It used to be all buyers in a conference room, and you could get people nodding their heads in agreement or not nodding their heads in agreement. And you could, at one point in time, just facilitate a sale. Now that changes. You're going to have to understand how to break up that buying process into smaller pieces. And then the last category on this is decreasing time to value. This is pretty important, because what we found in remote selling is, rather than show them how the city is built, show the skyscrapers, just show them the skyscrapers that they care about. Know your audience, don't overcomplicate things. What does your product do for each member of the audience? And how do you run an effective demo in a digital world? Next, please. So some other thoughts on remote selling. It requires what I like to call extreme participation. It's not easy to get all of the participants on a Zoom call that may have 10 or 15 people on it to participate. And it therefore requires really extreme preparation. Don't cram too much into too many topics. Some details and topics are better suited for email. So don't try to make that remote digital sales call be the be-all and end-all. Email can help set up things and follow up with things. Secondly is stick to the agenda. Ensure all voices are heard. Check for engagement and check for alignment. Not the easiest thing to do in a remote environment. And then there's what we call engineered engagement. Pre-plan the points of engagement. I think it's pretty important. Be sure that you've mapped the organization. You know who the players are. You know how they're going to be involved in the sales process. You know, who's an approver, who eventually signs the order, and who do you sell to in what particular way. It's important to keep the slides clean, probe for understanding during the presentation, and be sure alignment is happening throughout the session. And leverage digital tools like virtual whiteboards and polls and those types of things that you see on Zoom or Teams. And then, as in any good sales call, set up clear next steps. Be direct in setting up owners, be direct in setting up due dates, and be sure people understand on both on your side of the team and on the customer side of the team what has to happen next. Next slide, please. So just a few other things to think about, and then be happy to take any questions that you may have. I believe that, particularly when it comes to sales, but also many other parts of business, unprecedented change is here, and the stakes are pretty high. You either get this right, or failure could be ahead of one. Relationship selling, again, as I said, is kind of dead. It's a different kind of relationship selling. Deep subject matter expertise will reign supreme. Data and technology have created an opportunity, I think, for very high rewards if one adapts to them effectively, and change must be embraced as an opportunity and not as a threat. So hopefully, I'm certainly not the be-all, end-all subject matter expert on sales, but I have been in sales since I started out. I've been responsible for sales as a sales manager, and in the companies I've run, I've always tried to lead from the front when it comes to sales and be very engaged with customers. Hopefully this has been somewhat helpful, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Yes. Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I'm going.
Oh, great. We have one right here.
So I know you mentioned that relationship selling is dead, and that you have to really go into deep subject expertise. Do you still feel that sales people need to have that communication aspect that they had before going fully remote?
I think it's even more important. I think selling remote, the skilled communicator will win. And what we've noticed is, I'll give you an example. One of the companies I'm involved in sells software to primarily surgical centers, outpatient surgical centers. We were all face-to-face selling, and overnight became remote. And what you saw was the good communicators, the best salespeople in that organization, rose right to the top when it came to remote selling as well, because they were hard workers, they were well prepared, and they were really, really good communicators.
So that's even more important now.
I think so.
Awesome.
I have a question. So you were talking about how that with all the information that we have on people nowadays, with like the digital medium and like being able to kind of have the marketing teams and just sales teams get all that information on clients already, kind of before even maybe talking to them and doing an actual needs analysis with them. Do you think that that's going to kind of cut out that step almost on going and meeting with a client or having that call about like, what can we do for you, and make it more of a direct kind of sale where it's like, hey, I think that, this is a problem and we can offer you a better solution, without kind of doing a full on like meeting on that needs analysis?
I think you still need to ask questions of the client, and I think that you need to know a lot about them and what their needs are. I've always hated when salespeople come to me and they try to sell me something and they really don't know why I need that. So that clearly still exists, but a lot of that information can now be gathered digitally. Let me give you an example. One of the other companies I'm involved with sells its software. It's primarily a content and information-based company. It sells that information through a SaaS software vehicle to financial advisors. A financial advisor is selling their client on why they ought to use their services. And with the type of software, with the AI type of software that you have today, you can know so much about that client, what they're interested in, what their sports they are involved in, just by their web footprint. And so you can go into the call really starting a conversation about their interests, what their the type of clients that they have. It's really quite amazing it's amazing and scary the amount of information that marketers now have that they extract from the web. But I still think you need to ask questions. That won't go away.
Awesome, thank you.
With that question asking, I know you had said, previously in sales, it used to be a big table and you were pitching to a lot of people. Do you think it's more important now to take that advantage of being able to be from home and to connect with people on an easier level to use that information and really dig into that single person instead of, thinking just a sales pitch as a whole to a bunch of people?
I'm not sure I fully heard your question, but was it about zeroing in more on an individual than a group?
Yeah.
Okay. I think you need to do both. I think when you're on a remote sales call, if you're on with an individual, then you focus on that individual. If you're involved with a group, then I think you need to focus with the group. But preparation there is really essential because you need to know what everyone's role is in that group. One of the things that I always encourage our sales teams to do is to do a map of the organization. Who does what in that organization, particularly those people who are going to be on the Zoom, and really know as much as you possibly can by going to that organization's website, by going on LinkedIn, whatever other social media is available in preparation for the call. But the subject is most likely going to be a group subject, and therefore you're really talking with the group.
So Jim, I loved your bio and I loved how you kind of told us about going through Western and, you were going to be at work at a radio station and then your dad's friend just happened to say, oh, you should interview at IBM. And then because of the qualifications you got, all the studies you did at Western, you were able to ace that, get in there, be the top of your class. I know you probably hired so many people during your career. What advice can you give to our students about going for the interview? Any top tips that you have would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a funny story. I didn't even know what IBM was. I didn't. Picture this. Now we're back in the mid 60s. Way before most of you were born, and IBM was not a household word. They had just announced their first big mainframe computer, the IBM 360. I did not know what it was. I also did not know what salespeople did. To me, a salesperson was the Fuller Brush man or the pots and pans guys who knocked on my mom's door trying to sell something. I knew nothing about it. So I went to the interview relatively unprepared. Fortunately, I did okay with it. And then IBM in those days tested you to see, they used a thing which was called the DPAT test, which was the data processing aptitude test. And God knows why, but I did pretty well with it. And they put me through a series of interviews and offered me a job. In today's world, I think interviewing and testing is way more sophisticated. In the companies we're involved with, we recruit salespeople. Sometimes we recruit recent college grads. typically we're looking for people who have a little bit more experience, but not always. And, you know, the interview process, I think people just need to show they're smart. They understand, they came prepared, they know something about the company, they've studied up on the products, and they exhibit a lot of drive and a lot of sales personality, if you will. We then, in all of the companies I'm involved in, we do testing. And there depends on the type of business, but most of the companies I'm involved with are software businesses. And so we do use things like the old data processing aptitude test. That test actually still exists. It's been modernized substantially, but it still exists. And we want to know through that test how much aptitude that individual salesperson will have to deal with the products and services we offer. Hope that answers your question.
No, it does. We appreciate any tips that you have to give us.
Oh, Louise, can I?
Yeah.
Oh, can I jump in with a question?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you have, you know, I mean, you're talking about, you know, the changes that have been made during COVID, and as though this is the way it's always going to be, will never go back. And for someone like you who probably spent years of their lives on airplanes and in hotels and, you know, on the road, the idea of never having to do that again and, you know, do sales from your, you know, your room or whatever sounds great. But, you know, at the end of the day, people are relationship oriented, they're social, and, you know, they want to do business. And for people that are just starting their careers, the idea of, you know, just never going out on the road or do anything, you know, maybe doesn't sound as appealing as it does to you. Do you think there will ever be a place in which, you know, we return to some normalcy as it comes to two people sitting down for dinner talking about a product and, you know, how they be benefited from it?
Yes and no. I don't think it will return to what it was. I do think it will return to a combination of that. So many companies have proven that they can operate very effectively remotely that I don't believe that the old normal will not happen again. There'll be a combination. Relationships are still going to be important. And I do believe, I tend to try to separate this into kind of two categories of sales. One is what I call retail sales. I don't mean retail store sales, but I mean smaller sales that are done fairly quickly, and enterprise sales, which are selling to very large companies that are complex and take much, much longer. In the retail sales side of the business, I think that the way we're operating today during COVID will dramatically affect that. But if you think about it, a lot of that was remote before. A lot of new salespeople that are hired, particularly in the industries I'm involved in, spend the first year or two on the phone and have before. And then they will migrate more and more into kind of the middle-sized accounts and then eventually into enterprise sales. As you make that migration, I think more you'll still get on an airplane, you'll still have dinner, and you'll still do those types of things, but less so. You know, I'll give you an example of how profound I believe this change is. This company I was talking about that I'm on the board of that sells to ambulatory surgery centers. During COVID, our lease came up. The company's located in Georgia. During COVID, our lease came up. The landlord was not being particularly flexible in terms of the renewal. And we as a board said, you know what? We're operating pretty darn effectively right now. We're not, you know, sales have not dipped. Our salespeople are very productive. Our engineers are working very effectively remotely. We don't need a headquarters. We decided that we would stay remote. And if we needed people to get together and collaborate face to face, we'd use WeWork or one of those rented by the day type of built places. We saved ourselves $1 million a year.
Yeah, that's remarkable. And actually, if you look at the earnings reports, you know, of some major tech companies and things like that, and you look at their travel budgets, I've seen numbers going from 600 million to 100,000. You know, I mean, it's remarkable.
Oh yeah, it's
how things have
unbelievable.
changed. So,
Yeah, I would add to that. I'm sure you've been at plenty of those dinners, Jim, where there's 12 people at dinner, and there's a sales representative and a client, and only 2 or 3 of those people need to be at the big steak dinner. That ends up costing $1,500.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and companies are happy to shed those.
Absolutely. At the company that I ran for many years and I'm still on the board of, that company is now, I think, Greg, you know this, and Pete from conversations with me, that's now a $1.8 billion company. During COVID, our travel budget, which is multi-millions of dollars, is a tenth of that. Not even a tenth of it, less than a tenth of that. We don't think it'll ever go back to anything close to what it was.
Jim, I have a question for you. You talked a lot in your presentation about preparation. Do you feel that CRM platforms such as Salesforce are absolute necessities in the sales world now?
100%. As we've talked about before, I believe that you could do a great favor to your students if they can become really good at Salesforce and they can enter the workforce not having to be trained on Salesforce or the Microsoft equivalent. I mean, Salesforce dominates the space, and so I would choose Salesforce if we're just going to teach one. But coming into the world today without really understanding how to use a CRM and particularly Salesforce effectively is like coming into the world with one hand tied behind you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And we are right now in our Sales 2 course, we are emphasizing Salesforce. So I agree with you. I just was wondering your opinion. Thank you.
There are a lot of things I also think that students can, the inquisitive student can do pretty effectively on their own. Salesforce, I would advocate being taught in the classroom. Others, like, learning what I mentioned, CPQ. Go online and figure out what is CPQ. What are the companies that offer that in the various industries? Because there are so many automated tools today that are available to salespeople that it really gives you a leg. You go into an interview for a sales job and you can show the hiring manager that you're facile in Salesforce, you understand what some of these automated sales tools are, it's going to make you stand out.
Is there anything, I know we just jumped into Salesforce and you said, on the personal level for the students to kind of reach out and just dig into what a company might be using. Is there something, that would be easily accessible for us that, we could read into or study up on?
What I would do is go to, a couple that come to mind, go to a couple of company websites that, one comes to mind that's really good at sales tools is a company called Seismic. And they specialize in automated sales tools. And you can learn a lot about the journey of what automation has meant to sales. I can't think of more of them off the top of my head, but go to those websites. Another good website is very isolated to the insurance space, but another good website is a company which I'm on the board of called Zywave, Z-Y-W-A-V-E. They sell not just sales tools, but essentially the software we develop and we present to our clients on a SaaS platform are both sales tools or what we call front office tools that insurance agents and brokers can use to help sell their clients.
Thank you.
Can I jump in with a question?
Sure.
Can you hear me? Jim, thank you very much for the presentation. I just wonder, teaching global business, I spend quite a bit of time on soft skills, understanding other cultures, and you talk more about technical skills, automation. Are we wasting our time teaching soft skills in
No.
In the modern world?
No, I don't think you're wasting your time at all. But, my personal bias would be a little less emphasis on the soft skills and a little more emphasis on the technology and the technical skills. That's kind of where the world is going. We don't want a bunch of automatons. I don't want artificial intelligence to take over sales, and I don't think that will ever happen. But there's still going to be human beings behind the screen and in front of the customer, and they have to have soft skills, but they really have to have good technical skills.
Thank you.
I'll ask one more because I don't want to dominate here, but there's going to be trade-offs with everything that's going on, with COVID and less travel, those types of things. But if you look 10 years into the future, the role of sales, one of the things that's happened is I think we've become more efficient. So do you see sales positions as being more lucrative? I mean, are there more possibilities will come out of this? And, my question is more related to a lot of the students that are here obviously are interested in careers in sales. So, I mean, is it going to continue to be, a place where you can make a really good living?
I really am excited about the fact that you at Western have a sales curriculum, and is it a sales major even?
We have a sales minor and multiple classes in sales.
Yeah, because this is difficult to say, but the fact of the matter is that unless a student who comes out of Western is going to get a graduate degree, an MBA at Harvard, you're not going to get hired by a Wall Street bank or a private equity firm. That ain't going to happen. Where you can start out and make a really good dough and progress your career, which happens to be the way I did it, is in sales. I think you can get really good sales jobs if you have the skills to do the job and prepare yourself very effectively to do that job. And a really good sales position, an entry-level sales position, you're going to start out with a relatively low salary. It's probably going to be $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, but a good opportunity to earn commission. And if you're good at it, I've seen in our companies, first-year salespeople right out of college frequently break $100,000. Frequently.
Just for those in the room, that's better than being a professor.
Or plowing driveways. I've often said, Jim, that sales is an equal opportunity profession, and if you're good at it, the company doesn't care what institution you got your degree at, or if you came from a good family, the rest of it.
You're absolutely right, Greg. It is an equal opportunity profession, and it's an opportunity for you as an individual to prove your worth. If you're good at sales, you can make a lot of dough. We have people, just to whet your appetite a little bit, now people who have progressed through their sales careers and who become, what I call enterprise salespeople, calling on large accounts, selling big ticket stuff in the software business, make $500,000 a year quite often. And more.
So we have in our audience one of our first graduates of our sales program. She took a job in New York with Air Call, and she's back in Gunnison because of COVID and that. And can I ask Elizabeth to tell us a little bit, since you just started 2 years ago, your path? You feel like the money's been good? You feel like the opportunity's been good? Could you just give a little bit? I think it's really relevant since you graduated from the Pro Sales program. And what do you have to say to any of these students?
Yeah, hello everyone, I'm Elizabeth. So I went through the selling program with Tom Miller before I left Western. I took all 3 classes with a minor in entrepreneurship and marketing. But I made sure to just go out of the way and do the selling competitions, go to all these, webinars, really push myself out there. I took internships, but yeah, I mean, I recently just got promoted to account executive, so that's where I'm basically closing deals now.
Where are you working?
Air Call.
Out in New York City.
Yeah.
And you moved there after school.
Right. So I interned the summer before in New York City, made connections, and then followed my manager to that company. Followed the company because it was tech forward. It's going to be leading the future. It's a cloud-based phone system. It's going to be leading the future of business for the future. So the technology was super solid and the people were awesome. That's why I made that choice. But yeah, focus more on setting the meetings. Made sure to put in all the hard work that was there. Make sure to focus on areas that I wasn't as good at to, excel in the sales career. And now I just got to the promotion to close the deals. I'll be signing up people for the product, but yeah, it's been a really fun experience. Definitely learned skills that I didn't think I would learn. The ability to talk to random people on the phone. I can talk to anyone and be confident. Written communication. I feel like I have a lot stronger written communication. And you really push yourself out there because you be in like weird scenarios that aren't really comfortable. So yeah, it's been.
Where's your territory?
United States and Canada.
Oh, all over.
Yeah.
Okay. And money's good.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
More and more, by the way, I'm seeing companies that don't have defined geographic territories anymore. It's sort of like a big pot, and you draw out of the pot. And if you do fine with that customer, you get to keep them.
Yeah, no, it's been a blast. Really, I like any really big company that I want to talk to, I can just go reach out to them. I don't have any limitations in who I can reach out to.
Yeah, I think that's really a good trend, because what I found in running the companies I've run, certainly back in time, is you always had defined geographic territories. And the problem with that is there are always customers in those territories that people don't bother with or don't have time for, and they get neglected. And so give them to somebody else who's going to call on them.
That's great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Sorry to put you on the spot. She's in Gunnison now, so I thought, let's utilize
There you go.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I got one. So what is one thing that you love about your job?
Say again?
What is one thing that you love about your job?
One thing I love about my job? Currently, the thing I love most about my job is I'm old and I get to deal with really smart young people.
That's awesome. That's kind of how I feel at business school.
You're not as old as me.
But anybody else? Well, I want to thank you, Jim. This has been really helpful and so informative. I think that a lot of times we get very confused with COVID and you kind of get stuck. And to hear from somebody that's doing well out in sales, who has done so well in sales, but you're, giving your insight and wisdom is really a gift. And so we just want to thank you for that. Thank you for coming. This video will be put on the Maxine Pierce Executive Speaker Series YouTube channel, so we can watch it, and we appreciate that. And just so you know, next week we're not having the speaker series. We are going to have a preparation for our virtual All Colorado Career Fair. This is where career fairs are going. This is where you're going to meet a lot of, you'll see an email with a lot of different companies. We're really excited. We partnered with CU, CSU, Regis, Colorado College. This is what they're doing. And so I'm going to be hosting a professional development night. Really, it's just about how to navigate the career fair, how to make the most of it, how to stand out. Email me your resumes beforehand, because we'll have a lot of resumes here that you can kind of look at and make sure yours is up to speed. But that's where we'll be next week. And then the next week after that is our final speaker. It's another alumni named Doug Carlson. He is going to be talking on I have it right here. He is going to about entrepreneurial patience, perseverance, and perspective, insight and wisdom. And Doug is another successful alumni like Jim, and we're really just very, very thankful that y'all have come to speak to our students. So thank you, Jim. I appreciate your time.
No, it's been my pleasure. It's been fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.